Hey everybody. The last place we left off in Matilda was the middle of chapter 10, and Hortensia, who was an older kid, was explaining all the mean and nasty things that Trunchbull did to punish kids. So we're going to hear a little bit more about Trunchbull. Listen to this then, Hortensia said. Only yesterday the Trunchbull caught a boy called Julius Rotwinkle eating licorice all sorts during the scripture lesson, and she simply picked him up by one arm and flung him clear out of the open classroom window. Our classroom is one floor up, and we saw Julius Rotwinkle go sailing out over the garden like a frisbee and landing with a thump in the middle of the lettuces. Then the Trunchbull turned to us and said, "From now on, anybody caught eating in the class goes straight out the window." Did this Julius Rotwinkle break any bones? Lavender asked. Only a few, Hortensia said. You've got to remember the Trunchbull once threw the hammer for Britain in the Olympics, so she's very proud of her right arm. What's throwing the hammer? Lavender asked. The hammer, Hortensia said, is actually a ruddy great cannonball on the end of a long bit of wire. And the thrower whisks it around and around his or her head faster and faster and then lets it go. You have to be terrifically strong. The Trunchbull will throw anything around just to keep your arm in, especially children. Good heavens, Lavender said. I once heard her say, Hortensia went on, that a large boy is about the same weight as an Olympic hammer, and therefore he's very useful for practicing with. At that point, something strange happened. The playground, which up to then had been filled with shrieks and the shouting of children at play, all at once became as silent as the grave. Watch out, Hortensia whispered. Matilda and Lavender glanced round and saw the gigantic figure of Miss Trunchbull advancing through the crowd of boys and girls with menacing strides. The children drew back hastily to let her through, and her progress across the asphalt was like that of Moses going through the Red Sea when the waters parted. A formidable figure she was, too, in her belted smock and green breeches. Below the knee, her calf muscles stood out like grapefruits inside her stockings. Amanda Thrip, she was shouting. You, Amanda Thrip, come here. Hold your hats, Hortensia whispered. What's going to happen? Lavender whispered back. That idiot Amanda, Hortensia said, has let her long hair grow even longer during the holidays, and her mother has plaited it into pigtails. Silly thing to do. Why silly? Matilda asked. If there's one thing the Trunchbull can't stand, it's pigtails, Hortensia said. Matilda and Lavender saw the giant in green breeches advancing upon a girl of about 10, who had a pair of plaited golden pigtails hanging over her shoulders. Each pigtail had a blue satin bow at the end of it, and it all looked very pretty. The girl wearing the pigtails, Amanda Thrip, stood quite still, watching the advancing giant, and the expression on her face was one that you might find on the face of a person who is trapped in a small field with an enraged bull which is charging flat out towards her. The girl was glued to the spot, terror-struck, pop-eyed, quivering, knowing for certain that the day of judgment had come for her at last. Miss Trunchbull had now reached the victim and stood towering over her. I want those filthy pigtails off before you come back to school tomorrow, she barked. Chop 'em off and throw 'em in the dustpan. You understand? Amanda, paralyzed with fright, managed to stutter. My mommy likes them. She plates them for me every morning. Your mommy's a twit, the Trunchbull bellowed. She pointed a finger the size of a salami at the child's head and shouted, You look like a rat with a tail coming out of its head. My mummy thinks I look lovely, Miss Trunchbull, Amanda stuttered, shaking like a blancmange. I don't give a tinker's toot what your mommy thinks, the Trunchbull yelled. And with that, she lunged forward and grabbed a hold of Amanda's pigtail in her right fist and lifted the girl clear off the ground. Then she started swinging her around and around her head, faster and faster, and Amanda was screaming blue murder, and the Trunchbull was yelling, I'll give you pigtails, you little rat! Shades of the Olympics, Hortensia murmured. She's getting up speed now, just like she does with the hammer. 10-1, she's going to throw her. And now the Trunchbull was leaning back against the weight of the whirling girl and pivoting expertly on her toes, spinning round and round, and soon Amanda Thripp was traveling so fast she became a blur, and suddenly, with a mighty grunt, the Trunchbull let go of the pigtails, and Amanda went sailing like a rocket right over the wire fence of the playground and high up into the sky. "Well thrown, sir," someone shouted from across the playground, and Matilda, who was mesmerized by the whole crazy affair, saw Amanda Thripp descending in a long, graceful parabola onto the playing field below. She landed on the grass and bounced 3 times and finally came to rest. Then, amazingly, she sat up. She looked a trifle dazed, and who could blame her? But after a minute or so, she was on her feet again and tottering back towards the playground. The Trunchbull stood in the playground, dusting off her hands. "Not bad," she said, "considering I'm not in strict training. Not bad at all." Then she strode away. "She's mad," Hortensia said. "But don't the parents complain?" Matilda asked. "Would yours?" Hortensia asked. "I know mine wouldn't. She treats the mothers and fathers just the same as the children, and they're all scared to death of her. I'll be seeing you sometime, you two." And with that, she sauntered away. And there's Amanda after she got thrown. Poor Amanda. I'm going to read a little bit of the next chapter. It's even longer than this past one, and it's a really, really good one. It's called Bruce Bogtrotter and the Cake. "How can she get away with it?" Lavender said to Matilda. "Surely the children go home and tell their mothers and fathers. I know my father would raise a terrific stink if I told him the headmistress had grabbed me by the hair and slung me over the playground fence." "No, he wouldn't," Matilda said, "and I'll tell you why. He simply wouldn't believe you." "Of course he would." "He wouldn't," Matilda said, "and the reason is obvious. Your story would sound too ridiculous to be believed, and that is the Trunchbull's great secret." "What is?" Lavender asked. Matilda said, "Never do anything by halves if you want to get away with it. Be outrageous. Go the whole hog. Make sure everything you do is so completely crazy it's unbelievable. No parent is going to believe this pigtail story, not in a million years. Mine wouldn't. They'd call me a liar." "In that case," Lavender said, "Amanda's mother isn't going to cut her pigtails off." "No, she isn't," Matilda said. "Amanda will do it herself. You see if she doesn't." "Do you think she's mad?" Lavender asked. "Who?" "The Trunchbull." "No, I don't think she's mad, but she's very dangerous. Being in this school is like being in a cage with a cobra. You have to be very fast on your feet." They got another example of how dangerous the headmistress could be on the very next day. During lunch, an announcement was made that the whole school should go into the assembly hall and be seated as soon as the meal was over. When all the 250 or so boys and girls were settled down in assembly, the Trunchbull marched onto the platform. None of the other teachers came in with her. She was carrying a riding crop in her right hand. She stood up there on the center stage with her green breeches, with legs apart and riding crop in hand, glaring at the sea of upturned faces before her. "What's going to happen?" Matilda whispered. "I don't know," Matilda whispered back. The whole school waited for what was coming next. "Bruce Bogtrotter!" the Trunchbull barked suddenly. "Where is Bruce Bogtrotter?" A hand shot up among the seated children. "Come up here," the Trunchbull shouted, "and look smart about it." An 11-year-old boy, who was decidedly large and round, stood up and waddled briskly forward. He climbed onto the platform. "Stand over there," the Trunchbull ordered, pointing. The boy stood to one side. He looked nervous. He knew very well that he wasn't up there to be presented with a prize. He was watching the headmistress with an exceedingly wary eye, and he just kept edging farther and farther away from her. With little shuffles of his feet, rather as a rat might edge away from a terrier that is watching it from across the room. His plump, flabby face had turned gray with fearful apprehension. His stockings hung about his ankles. "This clot," boomed the headmistress, pointing with the riding crop at him like a rapier. "This blackhead, this foul carbuncle, this poisonous pustule that you see before you is none other than a disgusting criminal, A denizen of the underworld, a member of the mafia. Who, me? Bruce Bogtarter said, looking genuinely puzzled. A thief, the Trunchbull screamed. A crook, a pirate, a brigand, a rustler. Steady on, the boy said. I mean, dash it all, headmistress. Do you deny it, you miserable little gumboil? Do you plead not guilty? I don't know what you're talking about, the boy said, more puzzled than ever. I'll tell you what I'm talking about, you suppurating little blister, the Trunchbull shouted. Yesterday morning, during break, you sneaked like a serpent into the kitchen and stole a slice of my private chocolate cake from my tea tray. That tray had just been prepared for me personally by the cook. It was my morning snack. And as for the cake, it was my own private stock. That was not boy's cake. You don't think for 1 minute I'm going to eat the filth I give to you. That cake was made from real butter and real cream. And he, that robber bandit, that safe cracker, that highwayman standing over there with his socks around his ankles, stole it and ate it. I never did, the boy exclaimed, turning from grey to white. Don't lie to me, bog-trotter, barked the Trunchbull. The cook saw you. What's more, she saw you eating it. The Trunchbull paused to wipe a fleck of broth from her lips. When she spoke again, her voice was suddenly softer, quieter, more friendly, and she leaned towards the boy, smiling. You like my special chocolate cake, don't you, Bog-Trotter? It's rich and delicious, isn't it, Bog-Trotter? Very good, the boy mumbled. His words were out before he could stop himself. You're right, the Trunchbull said. It is very good. Therefore, I think you should congratulate the cook. When a gentleman has had a particularly good meal, Bog-Trotter, he always sends his compliments to the chef. You didn't know that, did you, Bog-Trotter? But those who inhabit the criminal underworld are not noted for their good manners. The boy remained silent. Cook! The Trunchbull shouted, turning her head towards the door. Come here, cook! Bog-Trotter wishes to tell you how good your chocolate cake is. The cook, a tall, shriveled female who looked as though all of her body juices had been dried out of her long ago in a hot oven, walked onto the platform wearing a dirty white apron. Her entrance had clearly been arranged beforehand by the headmistress. Now then, Bog-Trotter, the Trunchbull boomed, tell cook what you think of her chocolate cake. Very good, the boy mumbled. You could see he was now beginning to wonder what all this was leading up to. The only thing he knew for certain was that the law forbade the Trunchbull to hit him with the riding crop that she kept smacking against her thigh. That was some comfort, but not much, because the Trunchbull was totally unpredictable. One never knew what she was going to do next. There you are, cook, the Trunchbull cried. Bog-Trotter likes your cake. He adores your cake. Do you have any more of your cake you could give him? So the rest of the chapter is pretty long, so I'll leave you in suspense there, and we'll see what happens with Bruce Bog-Trotter and the cake on Wednesday. Have a great day.